welcome to Nobodies Talking Politics. Today, my guests Mario Toglia and Lou Gallo are here to discuss the saving of a church in Brooklyn, New York, Our Lady of Loreto Church, which dates back over a century ago and is filled with incredible history and architecture.
This is the church we're trying to save, Our Lady of Loreto Church in East New York, and this is the evaluation from the state of New York, the Office of Historic Preservation, and basically they say that they're saving it because of two criteria. Mm-hmm. One is that it's associated with the neighborhood, so it's the only reminder, it's the only building there that will tell people that Italians lived in that neighborhood. Once that building is gone, you don't know that Italians lived here. And the second reason is basically it's associated with the architecture, it's associated with the people who built the building.
It's quite a building.
Oh yeah, well if you look at the building, the first time I saw that building I said, gee, this doesn't belong in Brooklyn because I'm so used to brick and mortar churches.
Right.
And it looked like this was transported from Italy. These are the evaluation from New York State saying that the church has been made eligible for placement on National and State Registry.
Okay.
Okay, there are two reasons, because it's associated with the neighborhood people, and also because of its connection to architecture, art, and certain other
When was it built?
It was completed in 1908. It was started in 1906. And Our Lady of Loreto is a Brooklyn landmark distinctive for its association with Italian-American immigration history, especially with Italian Catholic immigration history. And that really played a big part. The Italians came here in the late 1890s. They came here with a lot of veneration for their saints. They had processions. They had masses. They sang. And now they're coming into a scene in America where the Irish are in control. The Irish came from their native country. They were suppressed by the British Protestants. And so when they were in Ireland, they kept their religious veneration, their devotion under wraps. They basically were quiet. So when the Italians came over, they were shocked. They thought they were pagans because they would have, they would cry and they would say the rosary and they were really very open about their religion. So, but anyway, when the Italians came here, they had to go to the local parish, which was Our Lady of the Presentation. This was built about 1850. Mm-hmm. Okay, but you could see with these pictures how very Italian they are. They do have the processions in the neighborhood, around the church. And they were very much involved with their family in the next picture. But unknown by many Americans, even Italian Americans, the Irish would not go for these types of rituals as they looked at it. So they set up what was called a national church, the National Italian Church. So there was a church in different areas in Italian neighborhoods, and anybody who was Italian from outside that area could bring their statues of their saints and have their masses and special services there. So we have the first three Italian national churches. We got St. Michael, we have Our Lady of Mount Carmel, and we have Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary. These were Italian national churches. And the fourth one was Our Lady of Loreto, which started out as a storefront, which I never knew that they started out as a storefront when they broke away basically from Our Lady of Presentation, and they wanted their own parish.
What's the status of the other three?
Oh, they're gone.
Oh, they're all gone.
They're gone. So now, what was the fourth national Italian parish is now the oldest. Not only is it the oldest in its original structure, but it's on its original footprint. The earliest record showed that it was owned by Pietro Cesare Alberti, and he's known in the Italian New York society or community as the first Italian to come to America with the Dutch. And he owned a whole stretch of land, and it just so happened that this piece of land, coincidentally, is where they built Our Lady of Loreto. So we have his record in the conveyance books. It says over here that it's owned by the children of Pietro Alberti. And so it represents a powerful and deep-rooted part of the cultural history of the neighborhood's past.
Right.
As I said, once that church goes, nobody knows Italians live there, and it continues on basically into the later years. Now, this is the priest who came from Italy around, I guess, the late 1890s, and he saw what the situation was with his immigrants, and he realized that they needed to have a church of their own, but he wanted to make a statement because the Italians were discriminated against. Actually, they were regarded as less than human in those days, okay? So he said to the bishop, he says, look, I want a church built only by Italians. He says, I'm not insulting the American tradesmen, but I want them built only by Italians. And he brought in the best.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're talking about the early 1900s.
Right.
So he went to New Jersey to the Federici and Armazzani Construction Company. They had just completed St. Stephen's Magyar Church. They built this for the Hungarian community in Passaic. And that's now a state national landmark. This is a picture of Antonio Federici. He had a special recipe to make the bricks look like marble. In fact, his recipe is patented in Washington, D.C. Now here's Adriano Armazzani. He came to the United States because he was hoping to have a career here. He just finished the Ark in the Shenley Park in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Gaetano Federici, he was a sculptor. In fact, they have an exhibit now in Paterson, New Jersey on his work, on his life. Here's another booklet. There's Gaetano Federici in older years. Mm-hmm. And his works are in here. They did his life story. So he is the sculptor laureate of Paterson, New Jersey. 40 of his creations surround the city of Paterson, but his largest work is in Brooklyn, New York.
Okay.
So even though the majority of his sculptures are in North Jersey, his largest creation is in Brooklyn.
So specifically, what's the reason that this is slated to come down? Like what?
It's slated to come down because they want to make money. They can build affordable housing, get money from the government agencies. And
how big a piece of property?
It's very small because they already had an agreement with New York State. New York State wanted both the church and the rectory to stay,
mm-hmm.
okay, and landmarked. So they came to a compromise. They said, okay, look, we'll let the diocese knock down the rectory, but they have to keep the church because that was their main focus.
Right.
So they signed a piece of paper. The state allowed them, gave them money to build apartment buildings around the apron of the church. So they built, 66 units, okay? Now, all of a sudden, they decide, we want to knock down this church. Why? Because they let it deteriorate. They weren't supposed to let it deteriorate. They signed an agreement. They were supposed to maintain that for the community.
Right.
And they did not do that, okay? Okay, just to mention as an aside, when St. Stephen's Magyar Church was being built, they were building the largest cast iron stone statue in the world inside that building. And that's a different person, but they worked with it. Mm-hmm. You can see it here. Here's Gaetano Federici, and these are some of the statues that he did around the city of Paterson, New Jersey.
Wow.
Okay, this was during an era where there was an industrial boom
mm-hmm.
in the country. Okay, so
mm-hmm.
that building stands on its own weight. There's very, very, very little reinforcement on the inside. It just stands on its own weight. And it was described actually as fireproof in those days. Plus, it was also described as the first church built in the entire United States in pure Renaissance style. And this here is the famous pediment, 33 feet long, and it depicts the translation of the House of Mary. This is called the Church of Our Lady Loreto. And the legend is that when the Muslims were moving into the Holy Land, the angels picked up Mary's house in Nazareth and carried it to the Balkans, to Dalmatia. Then the Muslims moved into the Balkans, and the angels came and picked up the house and delivered it to this town called Loreto. And when the people woke up the next day, they found this house that they had never been there before, and the legend came from that. So they built a beautiful church around that.
Speaking
house.
of that, there's no way to relocate the building, I would imagine, right? Because I know sometimes buildings are dismantled.
Well, see, that would
and-
destroy the historical significance of it, because this is the only national church that sits on the original parcel, the original footprint.
Right.
And so this church is just suffused with all kinds of superlatives. It sits on land that was originally owned by the first Italian to come to the colony of New Netherlands. It's
Right.
got cast stone technology, which was unique for its time. It has it's
Early design build technique.
all Italians, including the laborers. We have people on our committee whose fathers and grandfathers physically worked on this church to create it after a full day's hard work. So this, by keeping this church, not only should it be used as a cultural center for the Brownsville residents who live there, but this is a testament to a rich Italian heritage in Brownsville. And if that church goes, there's no remnant left.
Okay, so what exactly does it take to save it?
It involves a tremendous process to landmark it. First of all, and this is really important, especially for our viewers, Councilman Rafael Espinal Jr., who's the local councilman, according to the directives by the New York City Landmarks Commission, we need the stakeholder. To them, the stakeholder is the local councilman. If he gives his approval for it, and the resolution appears before the city council, all the other city council will honor his approval, and then it will pass. If it passes city council, it then goes to the New York City Landmarks Commission, and they will landmark it. When landmarked, it cannot be demolished, and we will be entitled to exterior renovation. And this is all why we're putting a lot of pressure on Rafael Espinal, who has not made a commitment one way or the other. We're not saying he's for it either, for the landmarking.
Right.
But he hasn't really come out with a public statement whatsoever. We have met with him once, we're trying to meet with him again, and I will say to the viewers, particularly those who live in Brownsville, if you're watching this program, it is imperative that you put as much pressure as you possibly can in Brownsville to force Councilman Espinal to approve this.
In doing what it takes to save it versus having it knocked down, what timetable are we looking at? Like when are they looking to?
Well, the clock is ticking. This has been an issue with our coalition known as the Brownsville Cultural Coalition, which is a consortium of not only local Italian organizations, but also the Brownsville residents, the Italian Studies Association that Magyar is a part of, the New York State Commission for Social Justice of the Order Sons of Italy in America. So we're technically stakeholders. I mean, although the New York City Landmarks Commission says, well, you don't have any stakeholders, we do. It happens to be the people who are either interested regarding its Italian heritage and those in Brownsville who see an opportunity to continue to perpetuate this existence by using it as a cultural center. They themselves say Brownsville's a cultural desert and they don't need any more affordable housing. They have more affordable housing in Brownsville than anywhere else in New York.
It's the most densely populated area
Right.
in the
As
United
far as
States.
that is concerned.
So it's basically coming down to people just wanting to make money.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how we see it.
Yes, that's right.
And as far the clock is ticking because there were the Catholic Charities Pot, which is the development arm of the diocese, and holds a lease. What is it? 53-year lease. 48 years or whatever it is, renewable for another 99. Put out these RFPs, these requests for proposals. Okay, based upon what Mario just said about the letter of resolution, you must now, although the rectory is down, you must now find adaptive reuse of this church in any development on that parcel.
Okay, now
So
explain what you just said now about the lease again. So,
the Catholic Charities Pot
right.
holds a lease on the property, so they're
Okay.
technically running the property, so to
Right.
speak, for the diocese.
Okay.
Okay, so in their mind, they're going to follow the letter of resolution. There must be adaptive reuse of the church for this parcel. So they put out this request for proposals. Okay, so they put it out. If you read it, and Mary and I have read it thoroughly, it's very restrictive. The time constraints are very short in duration. They ask you to take on the whole property, pay the taxes, do the maintenance,
Restoration.
everything in a
Right.
short amount of time. There were proposals that were met. They also restricted that it could not be a medical community to apply, a school, or even a church, which is ridiculous. This used to be a church.
Right.
So the Nazareth Christian Fellowship was came out of the box really quickly in 2010, and they submitted an RFP. It was immediately rejected because they said they were a religious institution, when that particular application also allowed also for cultural services and as well as the religious. And on that, they denied it. There were others, and Mario probably, he was on this early on, but Jeffrey Dunstan from Northeast Brooklyn Development
that was the first application.
He was the first application, and he was rejected.
Now, what about the local residents? Have they been? Has it?
Well,
been
we have the
outreach?
Brownsville the Brownsville Heritage House.
Okay.
And if you go there, it is a wonderful facility, especially for an Afro-American community. They have all these displays and artifacts. If you go in there, the place is literally littered with all this stuff, and they need a lot of space. And so they see this as a golden opportunity to spread their wings in this church as a cultural center, along with a group called NIA Productions. That's NIA Productions. That's a theater group headed by Les Ford, and they see an opportunity to do theater performances here.
Sure.
So you could have a tremendous amount of diverse cultural activities which will revitalize this community, which they call themselves a cultural desert. We don't need housing, we need culture.
You can either have all those good things or more affordable housing that nobody
There used to be 20 or some odd theaters
23.
there. 23,
movie
none.
theaters. They're gone.
There's nothing for these kids. There's nothing for the adults. There's nothing for this except this warehousing of
Of people.
occupants in public housing.
Right.
And what's there for them? Well, this is the opportunity. So when they heard about this church was now in mothballs and was ready to be demolished, they immediately all got together and they said, this is a golden opportunity. And eventually we formed a coalition, the Italian groups with the local Afro-American Latino groups, and hey, we're going, at this point what we're trying to do is to forestall the demolition, because now as we begin to grow, as we begin to emerge, as we begin to organize better, we would like to see some pressure put on in some way to give us more time, because we think we can come up with a viable proposal, including money, to restore the interior of this church and therefore make it possible for these Brownsville residents to have something worthy of.
We have certain organizations that are looking to give us money, but they want to know what's happening to the church.
Exactly.
Right. Okay.
So if we go to the next one, basically you look at these statues, they look like Bernini statues, Bernini style statues that are on the facade. This is all done by Gaetano Federici, and here are some bas relief, and now you get a beautiful view of the facade of the church from below. This is a photograph by a...
What a shame to knock that down.
Yes, definitely. This is the interior, which now has been stripped of the pews and the altars and the statues and the stained glass window, but the paintings still remain. Okay, this is the artist. This is the Italian immigrant artist, Gaetano Capone. He came to the United States. Usually we think of Americans going to Europe to do their paintings. Now we see an Italian, a European comes to the United States to paint landscapes. He went to New Orleans, and then he also came up to the Hudson Valley. And now this here is a replica of Raphael's Transfiguration from the Vatican. This is on the ceiling. This is a fresco.
Wow.
And the next one, you can't see it that well, that's the Immaculate Conception by the Spanish artist Murillo. And this is an original. That's his version of the translation of the House of Mary. And this is all
still there now?
It's there, but I'm sure it's damaged by now.
Right.
Okay, I'm sure the rain is coming through. They poked holes in the roof deliberately. And now we have an interior decorator, which I didn't even know about. This is Serafino Biancardi, and I got this through doing research. And he was an interior decorator for Broadway theaters. And you figure this is in the early 1900s. Banks, theaters, and the homes of prominent Americans, politicians. He was an interior decorator. You can see this is one of the designs he probably chose for the floor. And of course we see that this is an Italian neighborhood at that time. Those stores are all gone. The Italians have left. Significance of the architectural construction. Here is a newspaper article from 1907 when the church was being built. And if you look at the next, I have it in larger letters, it says, only specimen of pure Renaissance in the country. It's the first church built in a particular style, and it's in Brooklyn. Why should Brooklyn lose it?
Right.
So architectural uniqueness, Our Lady of Loreto is a highly significant exemplar of cast stone construction in the United States. There's the building and the rectory, built at the same time.
And that's gone now.
That
That's
is gone. That was completed in 1907. The church was completed
What's
in
there now?
1908. Just the church, and then
No,
we
what's
have-
where that was?
that's the entrance to a parking lot.
Yeah,
Here, now, this is very important because when we were in the first campaign, we brought in a church restoration company to tell us how much it would cost to restore the church. This company, Milan Church Restoration, said about $2 million. The diocese said no, it was about $4 million. So we asked them to show us their records. They never did. So we kept going back, 2 million, 4 million.
Right.
So finally, New York Landmark Conservancy said they would give us $40,000 to send in an independent engineering team to go into that building and determine what was the cost. They would not let that group in.
Really?
They refused to let that group in, and then at the very end they said, no, we're going to give it to Catholic Charities, we're knocking it down the building. And that's when we really started the campaign with presentations.
Did they give a reason why they wouldn't let that group in?
No,
no,
They
they
just
give
said
no
no.
reason.
They give no
They
reason.
ignore. We petition them through phone calls, letters, ignored.
Okay, now what can people do? People watching this, how can they help? What can
Basically, they'd have to write to Rafael Espinal.
We have to need a flurry of letters to Rafael Espinal.
Okay.
I would also say the governor. I think the governor needs to step in.
Okay, but the reason why we want to focus on him because Landmarks Commission claims we need the stakeholder, and in their eyes and mind, the stakeholder is the councilman. So we've really done a best job to try to appeal to him, to try to sit down with him and talk to him. I was able to get Senator Tony Avella, who finally did respond to a letter that I wrote, and that he actually, the way I see it, put the diocese on the carpet and said, listen, meet with these people. Meet. Come out and meet. You know, and as soon as that happens, believe me when I tell you, Gerry, that when the Brownsville people, Miriam Robertson, Les Ford, some of the other people that are there, when they get into that scene, they are so passionate and so thankful that this institution still is there with historic significance that they can perpetuate and to continue on as a cultural center that would identify with them and revitalize their area. They're so passionate in their voice and they really want it so badly, and it's imperative that the viewers do the best they can to get on the internet. You can find the address of Councilman Rafael Espinal Jr. He's in the Bushwick section, and write a letter as from the heart and say, as a resident here in Brownsville, we find this an imperative. This is an imperative action, and that we need you to come on board and support this to revitalize our area. And that's really the thrust at this point, because from the experts that we speak to, and I mean preservationists, people involved in restoration, politics, or restoration action, say you got to get the constituents out there.